And thank you for joining us tonight for this week's episode of Up in the Air. I'm Ryan Breton.
And I'm Meredith Fish. Ryan, earlier this week we experienced some very nice spring weather.
Yeah, we definitely did, Meredith, and it was nice to go outside and not freeze for once.
Yes, that's for sure. Coming up on this week's episode, Dakota will have a look at our climate outlook for the next 8 to 14 days, and he will tell us whether or not the warm weather will continue.
Plus, we'll be joined by Paul Svensson with the latest on soybean and natural gas futures, and Ben Reppert and Jacob DeFlitch will stop by with information on how meteorologists predict everyday weather.
But first, let's get started with Update in the Air. Many have probably heard that the redder a sunset, the more pollution in the air. Well, according to a study published on Tuesday, the sunsets artists have depicted have gotten redder over the past 150 years, suggesting a reflection of the increased man-made pollution. The beautiful red sunsets we love to watch are the result of particles scattering the sun's rays. This study showed that in paintings, the deeper the red, the more pollution at that time. For example, paintings after volcanic eruptions were much redder than usual. This correlation may be able to provide reliable estimates in the atmosphere before instrumental measurements existed, said the lead study author. Results of the study showed that during the time period of 1500 to 2000, the reddish hues in sunsets spiked during periods of volcanic activity. They also found that paintings after the Industrial Revolution have also gotten redder, regardless of volcanic activity. Although beautiful to watch, one must weigh the harms of all the extra particles in the air.
We finally have turned the calendar from March to April, and I think that many of us would like to forget about the weather we experienced last month. Frequently here on Up in the Air, we discuss the observations taken here in the Department of Meteorology at Penn State, where detailed records go back 118 years to 1896. This March, the mean temperature was more than 6 degrees below the long-term average, and on March 25th and 27th, record low-high temperatures were set and tied, respectively. While the cold was unprecedented, snow was basically non-existent. No measurable snow was recorded at our Walker Building site, only the 5th time since 1893. It is additionally the 4th time since 2000. March 2000, 2009, and 2012 were also snowless in State College, though that can largely be contributed to warm weather. This March, the cold Canadian air coming into Pennsylvania forced the storm track south of the region, and the nation's capital was slammed with several inches of snow, while we were left cold and dry.
2013 has been confirmed as the hottest year on record in Australia. Now, an international team of scientists are asking for 10,000 members of the public to run a series of simulations on their home computers based on the weather of 2013. There will be 2 ensembles run during this project, one representing actual climatic events and another possible weather event if the atmosphere was not altered by human-released emissions. This citizen science project is the first of its kind for Australia. It is working in conjunction with the University of Melbourne, University of Oxford, and the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research in New Zealand. Using other people's home computers, the scientists will have over 10,000 years of climate model simulations in just 2 weeks, something they could not have gotten on their own. Rising temperatures, bushfires, and drought conditions are all hot topics in Australia, as the fire season is lengthening with the gradual decline in rainfall since the 1970s.
Next on the show, we're joined by a member of Meteorology 460, our department's class on weather risk and financial markets.
Paul Svensson is here with the latest from the soybean and natural gas markets.
Today we will be analyzing the natural gas futures market. Every Thursday, the Energy Information Agency, or EIA, releases a storage report that tends to move the market. This past week's report shows a 57 BCF withdrawal, leaving us with 896 BCF left in storage. This was slightly higher than estimates, likely causing the increase in natural gas prices we saw after the report was released last Thursday. Most of this withdrawal came from the east, a region that saw below normal temperatures over this period. Overall, this winter has been well below normal in terms of temperatures, especially for areas around the Great Lakes who have averaged upwards of 10 degrees Fahrenheit below normal so far this year. Coupled with below normal conditions in heavily populated areas in the Northeast and South, this cold has been a major player in the futures market for most of the winter because of the increase in demand and depletion of storage levels. Historical data of working gas in underground storage shows just how low storage levels have become. With the blue line representing this year's storage and the gray path showing the 5-year range, it is clear that we are well below what storage has been in the near past during this time of year. With withdrawal season coming to a close and injection season poised to begin soon, 2,500 BCF will need to be put in the ground to get storage levels back to what they were last summer. Even though storage levels are historically low, if it were not for a recent increase in production from the Marcellus Shale region, shown in green, we may very well have been dealing with a storage crisis. Current CFS model data suggests that most of the extreme cold will retreat back into Canada for the first 2 weeks of April, with temperatures remaining at or around normal across the eastern two-thirds of the nation. This makes me believe that weather will not play a major role in natural gas markets in the short to medium range. As for the long range, the current thinking is that below normal conditions may leak into the northern part of the country come mid-April, but by the end of the month there may be a fairly substantial warm-up. This is the time frame that will have a larger impact on the market. If more cold air moves into the U.S. than is currently being forecasted, this could delay the onset of injection season. Here is the current price chart for June futures contracts. After a spike in February because of a storage scare, prices have settled into the 430 to 460 range. Going forward, the market will likely fluctuate in this range before moving higher in the long term, though this is highly dependent on what the summer brings. Regardless, there will need to be an increase in production to compensate for the low storage levels present after this harsh winter. The extra time and resources put into this will likely drive the price up to the $4.50 to $5 range by the summer. For Up in the Air, this is Paul Svensson.
Thanks very much, Paul, for that report.
And now, Meredith, it's the time in the show when we'd like to take a look at our climate outlook.
The milder weather this week has certainly been very nice, but I hear that overall temperatures will remain below average.
That's right. Heading into April, Dakota is here now with the details on whether or not we'll have warm weather.
Well, thank you, Ryan and Meredith. And yes, as you said, we've seen some warmer weather over the past week. Unfortunately, in the next 8 to 14 days, we're going to see some below normal temperatures across the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Now, that's not to say it's anything like this harsh and cold winter that we've seen this year, just not quite as warm as you would expect for mid-April. First, let's get into our U.S. current snow cover. Now, we can still show this map because it's still relevant. There's still some snow on the ground across the eastern Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania. Believe it or not, there's still some snow out here. On Sunday, we saw this nice snow band set up across eastern Pennsylvania, dropped anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow, even extended all the way down here in northern Maryland, northern Carroll County, Maryland, back where I'm from. Highest snow total was 9 inches in Manchester. Quite remarkable. It wasn't actually in the forecast to see that much snow, so it caught meteorologists and the public off guard, which is never a good sign if you're driving or traveling anywhere. Across the United States, 23% covered in snow. That's up 2% from what we saw last week at 21, probably mainly due to this interesting snow band that dumped some snow where there wasn't any snow previously. Out to the west, it's a similar story that we've seen in past weeks. Lots of snow across the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, Utah, and in the Pacific Northwest. Lots of snow. That's great to hear for some of the ski resorts. I know skiers and snowboarders out in the west are happy alike. In California, we're still holding on to some of this snow in some of the mountains out there. That's great to hear. They've seen some precipitation that they haven't been getting over the past few weeks. On to our temperature outlook. This is an unfortunate map because it gives us below normal temperatures across the entire Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, some pockets of much below normal temperatures in the Northeast and upper Midwest. This extends all the way down to the South and even the Gulf Coast, below normal temperatures expected between April 8th and April 14th. Now out to the west, again a similar story, above normal temperatures throughout this entire area, all the way from California down to parts of western Texas. That's maybe a good sign for some of you that aren't a fan of the cold this winter, although in California you've really haven't seen much cold in terms of the coast this winter, nothing like the Northeast has seen. Now under our precipitation outlook, above normal precipitation for the Northeast and upper Midwest. Down here as you get into the South, not as wet. Down here in Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, below normal precipitation expected between April 8th and April 14th. Now out to the central United States, below normal, as I said over here, and parts of western Texas, below normal precipitation. Out to our west, above normal precipitation, leaking over into eastern California. That's a great sign. Any precipitation in California at this rate is a good sign. In the Pacific Northwest, just a little blip of below normal precipitation for this time of the year. So I hope that gave you a little taste of what to expect in the next 8 to 14 days. Ryan and Meredith, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you very much, Dakota, and hopefully even though we will be below normal, it won't feel quite as harsh since, Meredith, temperatures this time of the year should be nearing 60 degrees.
Now we're joined by Jake DeFlitch and Ben Reppert, students in Penn State's Weather Communications class.
And they have details on numerical weather prediction, those computer models you hear about frequently that meteorologists use to forecast the weather.
NWP, I think, is in pretty good shape. The problem is, or the good thing, it depends on how you look at it, is that it's available to many more people now.
When the numerical weather prediction began in the 1970s, it was strictly a forecasting tool used by the National Weather Service.
But in the past decade or so, you may have noticed that these weather computer models have been spreading more into the academic and public sectors, and now everyday people are beginning to know what these things are.
In the United States, NOAA, the driver of the public sector of the weather enterprise, runs many computer models a day, including the NAM, a short-range, high-resolution model, and the GFS, standing for the Global Forecast System, which goes out into the longer range.
Outside of the U.S. weather enterprise, other countries including Canada, Great Britain, and Japan run their own weather models in order to better forecast their everyday weather. The public can access these various weather models through the private and the academic sector as well. For example, Twister Data, a private sector entity, as well as Penn State University's eWall, provide various model runs at no cost.
Computer models can also come in handy for weekly weather briefings, such as the ones given here at Penn State University.
Student meteorologists like us have our own perceptions on how weather modeling has evolved over the past several years.
We decided to speak to Ray Ban, a meteorologist for over 40 years, to hear what he had to say about the past, present, and future of the numerical weather prediction.
The more the public understands about what we do, I think the greater their understanding of the challenges we still face and the opportunities that we have for investing in further research so that we can just get better. So the more transparency and the more the end user understands what we're doing, the better off we are.
Numerical weather prediction models generate a countless number of forecasting tools and products that can be used by meteorologists and even weather enthusiasts at home globally. One example that has been gaining a lot of popularity in recent years are model snow maps, just like this one. They are not necessarily the most accurate, and that is why old-fashioned meteorology is still very important in modern-day weather forecasting.
Forecasters, some of which use models better than others, their opinions are out there as well, and the general public may not know who to believe as readily as they once thought they did.
It takes an educated and experienced scientist to really look at that information and provide the insight needed to turn the data itself into value.
As the public becomes more aware, it will be interesting to see how the numerical weather prediction continues to evolve and is used throughout the weather enterprise.
For Up in the Air, I'm Ben Reppert.
And I'm Jake DeFlitch.
Thanks, Jake and Ben, for that report.
And that about does it for this week's episode of Up in the Air. As always, we thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you right back here again next week. I'm Ryan Brett.
And I'm Meredith Fish. Join us next time, Up in the Air.